Hello, John Bloodworth, Gentleman Crafter here with more fun with foundation paper piecing. Unlike previous videos, we're actually going to be working with 4 blocks at a time this time in order to make a single pattern. During the month of May, we'll be making a variety of stars. I'll also be including templates that have the fabric colour and the number of parts to cut in that colour. You'll also get all 4 patterns on one sheet of paper, so you can print them onto a single sheet of foundation paper piecing, and then you'll separate these down into the individual 3-inch blocks. As normal, we work on the back of the pattern, and we place our first piece of fabric right side facing up, and all subsequent pieces right side facing down. The pattern pieces themselves have directional numbering, so if you're looking at the number and it's in the right direction, you know that your pattern piece is also in the right direction. So we're going to position that so we match up the edges and then pin it in place. You can of course use clips or whatever you prefer, but for now I just tend to pin. This is number 18 in a series of videos. I'm doing one a week throughout 2022. And I'm also encouraging people to share what they make in a Facebook group. More on that later. I've set my machine up with a short stitch spacing, and now I'm going to stitch down the dashed line between parts 1 and 2. Tack stitching at the start and end. Take your time to make sure you're stitching on the line rather than either side. This can make a difference to how things turn out later on. I'll also apologise in advance if I sound snotty and or coughy. It's hay fever season right now and I am a bunch of mucus. Excuse me. Trimming the threads as normal, unpinning, and then quite often you'll see me use the finger pressing tool to press things in place. But when I start working in larger blocks or combinations of blocks, I tend to press as I go. This helps secure the stitching in place and also make sure that that seam is nice and pressed flat. There's no danger of it springing up and doing any untold damage later on. Okay, putting part 3 there, right side facing down. Not that you would be able to tell with a plain coloured fabric, but that's what the pattern pieces are numbered for, so you can make sure you get it right. Stitching again on the line, this time between parts 1 and 3. So I mentioned the Facebook group a few minutes ago. Basically I'm just encouraging you to share whether you make a single block or a completed project from a bunch of these blocks. You can find a link to it in the description below the video on YouTube, or of course in the accompanying blog post on my website gentlemancrafter.com, where you can also download the pattern set for this particular project and all of the others that I've done so far. Making sure that I trim the threads to stay neat and tidy as I work, and pressing that final piece back. This is a nice quick design to do. But actually it can create a very large project very quickly. Now I'm going to trim back all of the paper and fabric to the solid outline of that block. Just using a regular quilting ruler, any size will do as long as it goes from end to end on the pattern piece. And I've got a small rotary cutter. Big rotary cutter will do, it doesn't matter. Okay, so there's part 1 of our 4 patch. You would then go ahead and complete the other 3. And then we have all pieces that we need to make the star. So we're going to join these in rows first, and then we're going to join them in columns. So top left over top right, pin in place, and then we're going to stitch down the left hand dashed edge. Take your time to make sure these things are in place and directly on top of each other without any movement, as it could make a big difference later on. Tack stitching at the start and end of these particular seams is quite important because you don't want them to accidentally start coming apart, especially when you're making a bigger project. And do bear in mind that you will be stitching through multiple layers of fabric and paper, so you'll need a good strong machine and a fresh needle. That's what I meant to say. Both of those things can make a difference. I say a good strong machine, I mean I'm just using a basic electronic machine. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just needs to be able to tackle thicker projects. Okay, I'm going to open that out and place it face down. Then use my finger pressing tool to gently tease apart the seam allowance and press it flat. I'm then going to secure that in place by permanently pressing it with the iron. No particular technique here, just making sure that thing's flat. I do tend to do this from the front and back. We're going to repeat that with the 2 pieces that make up the bottom of the star. And while I do that, please let me ask you to give the video some kind of rating, a thumbs up, or even a thumbs down if you hate it, a comment, a thought, a question, whatever you fancy. All this interaction does help the video get recommended to other users, so if you think it's of value and would be of benefit, then doing so would be greatly appreciated. If of course you would like to see more of these, then make sure to subscribe as well and hit the bell icon next to that subscribe button, as that will then make sure to give you notifications wherever you have them enabled, whether that's on the YouTube app on your phone or in Chrome browser or somewhere like that on your computer. I do post other crafting videos and content, so that will come up unfortunately. So if sewing is just your bag, sorry in advance. Okay, so repeating here what I did for that top part, opening out the piece, placing it face down, teasing apart the seam, and then pressing. Making sure that your seams are neat and crisp and even is part and parcel of foundation paper piecing. It does make a huge difference, especially when you're joining multiple blocks. Okay, we're now going to fix the top to the bottom, and if you have any parts that sort of fall within the seam allowance, don't panic. Just remember, when you get to this stage, line up the paper, not the fabric. Do make sure that seams line up as well, and these 2 things should eradicate any slightly skew pieces that we've had going on during sewing. At least any of those that touch the outer edge. Sewing down the long seam on the side, making sure that seams go under the presser foot flat so they don't ruffle up and cause extra bulk, because they are going to be bulky enough already. And definitely making sure to tack stitch or reverse stitch even a couple of times at the start and the end, just to make sure those seams don't come undone. Okay, so we're unpinning. And then again, we're going to open this out, place it face down, and tease open the seam allowance all the way down and press it flat. Some people like to, when they're joining the top to the top and the bottom to the bottom, they like to press the seams in one particular direction so that when it comes to this stage, there isn't necessarily excess bulk. My preference is to sort of do flat on flat. When we remove the paper, there will obviously be more drape to the fabric, so don't worry too much about it being quite rigid and bulky at the moment. Okay, and there we go. There's our first star completed and our first 4-patch. I hope you've enjoyed it and will give it a go yourself. In the meantime, thanks for watching.